tender, juicy, thinly sliced venison backstrap steak. Rich, savory sauce made even more delicious with sour cream, mushrooms, wine, seasonings, and some amazing rustic egg noodles. Well, since you've already seen the thumbnail and the video title, you know I'm talking about Stroganoff. And keeping in line with the theme of my unofficial venison series, of course we're using venison for this instead of beef. You know, and doing a little bit of reading to figure out what I wanted to say in this video intro, I learned a bit about the origin and kind of progression of Stroganoff as we know it. Of course, everybody associates Stroganoff with Russia and being of Russian cuisine. And while that's true, kind of, in that it originally, way back when, started as kind of a Russian peasant food made very cheaply with super basic ingredients, as they often did, at some point in time, the French came along and changed it completely. And for the better. They basically took the concept of Stroganoff and French cuisinified it, and these days a high quality Stroganoff is mostly made with what you would call French technique. Maybe the only kind of Russian thing about it is the onions and sour cream, but onions and sour cream aren't exactly exclusive to Russia or Russian cuisine, so I don't know. Anyway, it's got a Russian name, it's got French technique, and it's got just absolutely loads of flavor. So wherever the heck it came from, we're making it today. And it's my opinion that this is the best Stroganoff recipe ever, anywhere. And if you're a fan of noodles, sauce, mushrooms, and meat, there's no way you're not gonna love it too. So let's get into this and take a look at the venison backstrap we're gonna be using for this. Here we've got a nice venison backstrap that weighs in at almost exactly 1 pound. I could have certainly used a different piece of meat for this, like one of the more tender cuts from a rear haunch, but I'm using steak for my Stroganoff because I want to and because it's going to be delicious. The first thing I'm going to do is beat it just a little bit with my meat tenderizer. You can see this backstrap is a little thicker on one side than the other, so I'm just going to even that out a little bit. I'm not trying to flatten this thing or hammer it to death like I did in my venison schnitzel video, just a little gentle pummeling to get it a bit more symmetrical. Now to season. I'll give it a generous amount of coarse salt and black pepper all over every side. Next, a little prep work. I'll slice up a yellow onion into pretty thin slices, then mince up a few cloves of garlic, and then the white mushrooms. I bought these already sliced, but there are some huge mushroom slices in there, and I want to give those a chop or two just to make all my mushroom bits a little more uniform in size. Now we're moving over to the stove, and in my large cast iron skillet, I'll get some butter melting, along with a squirt of olive oil. When that's good and hot, in goes my backstrap. I'm going to let this meat brown for a solid couple minutes on each side. I want to sear a decent crust on all sides, and I'm not trying to cook the meat through at this point, just brown it with a hard sear over pretty high heat. And I'll make sure to get those long sides and even those short little ends. Now I'll just set that steak aside for a bit until I'm ready for it again. And into that same skillet, I'll add a little more butter, and then the onions are going in, followed by the mushrooms. I'll season with a good pinch of kosher salt and black pepper, give it a quick stir, and now I'm just sauteing these down until softened. When that happens, I'll throw in the minced garlic and cook for another minute. Now to deglaze with a little dry white wine. I'm using Pinot Grigio for this. I'll let this all simmer for a couple minutes until almost all of the wine is cooked off. At that time, I'll add in a tablespoon of tomato paste, then a tablespoon of beef paste. I like the Better Than Bouillon brand, and then a tablespoon of all-purpose flour. Stir that all in until it's very well incorporated. Oh, and I almost forgot the soy sauce, just a couple teaspoons. Alternatively, you can use Worcestershire sauce. I happen to prefer soy, but either works. Let everything cook for just a minute, and then I'm going in with 1 cup of beef stock. Stir that in, then a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. Now I'll just toss in a few thyme sprigs and let everything simmer on very low heat for about 10 or 15 minutes. In the meantime, I'll get some water boiling for my egg noodles. You can use any kind of egg noodles you like, but I really enjoy these old-fashioned wide noodles. They're not as squiggly and twisty as the more common kind you'd see, but I think they're the perfect size, shape, and thickness for a good hearty stroganoff. I'll get those noodles boiling away in my water, and while that's happening, it's time to slice the meat. So using a very sharp knife, I'll cut my backstrap steak into slices, against the grain, about as thinly as I can get. Like I said, we were not cooking this steak in the skillet, just browning it to form a nice crust. It'll cook the rest of the way when it gets mixed into the stroganoff, which is happening now. I'll remove and discard those thyme sprigs, and then all that beautiful tender venison is going in. These super thin strips will not take long to finish cooking in that simmering sauce. I'll give it about 5 minutes and then turn off the heat, at which time I'm stirring in my sour cream, about 3/4 of a cup of full fat sour cream. This will give my sauce the creaminess, body, and classic flavor that an incredible stroganoff ought to have. Finally, the noodles. Using my big strainer spoon thingy, I'll just scoop out some of those noodles and get them stirred in. Maybe just a few more. And there we have it. Now to see if I can transfer this all into a serving bowl without making a terrible mess. And I'd call that a success. Garnish with some fresh chopped parsley just to make it pretty. And our amazing, beautiful, creamy venison stroganoff is finally ready for a taste. Oh my God. Without question, the most delicious stroganoff I've ever eaten, homemade or otherwise. Venison, beef, anything. I can't even tell you how good that is. So many different things going on that individually are pretty subtle, but they come together in just the most delicious way. Those old-fashioned noodles, in my opinion, are the perfect consistency and thickness and texture to support that sauce. The way I made that venison backstrap came out super tender and delicious, of course. The mushrooms, the hint of wine in the background there a little bit, the thyme, the seasonings, of course, the sour cream that just sort of ties everything together in any stroganoff recipe. You know what? Forget the venison, forget the beef. Make this a vegetarian recipe if you like, because it absolutely would stand up all on its own without even adding in the protein. Think of it like a kind of Russian, kind of French pasta dish. Anyway, of course, there's no way for me to properly describe to you how this tastes and how good it is, so why not make it for yourself and give it a try? Of course, the full recipe with all the ingredients will be in a link in the video description below. And be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all my latest stuff, including future venison and cooking videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Great Lakes Prepping.